Lucy Piper is a force, a creative turned climate strategist, a former film technician turned director at Work for Climate and the Sunrise Project. She's a friend I've known and been inspired by for over a decade. But what makes Lucy truly remarkable is how she brings her full humanity into her work. You'll hear how a single moment on a tram, listening to Greta Thunberg, reoriented her entire career. How she sees play and imagination not as distractions from serious work, but as essential to leading real change. And how influence, to her, isn't about titles or platforms. It's about showing up right now and using whatever power you have to build a better future. This episode's a masterclass in what it means to wield influence ethically, creatively, and courageously. This is the art of influence, where together we learn from leaders in creativity and entrepreneurship about how to use the tools of influence to create lasting impact. Let's dive in.
Have I told you the story of when I was a camera trainee on one series and I was good friends with the sound guys, and in between takes I used to sing into the boom, and we were like, it was an 8-week job, and at the end of the job, last day before we wrapped, Alex, the sound tech, he started playing something in the studio and it was my voice. Oh God. They had recorded, when I started singing, they started recording it and then they edited it into this mashup of me singing different musical theatre tunes and played it to the whole shoot. One of my proudest moments.
Your singing story is a massive name drop, but I did a show with Delta Goodrum. And
of course you did. You were duetting,
in the breaks,
weren't you?
No. Her co-star for the whole show was duetting, but every break, it was like magic. There was a piano in the corner of the room. Like, it didn't matter where unit was set up. We were in like a hall somewhere or a house, and like, oh, there happens to be a piano here. So we'd all be like having our craft services, and all of a sudden Delta would just like,
oh my God,
come in on a ray of sunshine. It's like, oh, I'll come and sit and just tinkle at the piano.
She's the most beautiful and talented
It's the
human
first time
on
in
planet
all the stuff
Earth.
I've done that I got star power. Like the aura literally walks in a room and people change.
When's she coming on your podcast?
Well, that's why I got to work. I was about to say I'm going to work my way up to that, but that's
working
really...
your way down.
No, yeah, exactly.
Working your way back. Thanks. It's all right. I have self-awareness of where my talent level is at compared to Delta. You know, one day.
I did want to think about how to kick us off, and I have a question for you, and that is, how do we unfuck the world?
It's a great question. I don't think that we can unfuck the world. I see the world that we're living in now, like, call it the prevailing system. The prevailing system, capitalism, is... I had to take a breath in because this is heavy stuff. Kade, straight in there. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay. The prevailing system is not working for us. I think we've breached like 7 of the planetary boundaries now. Like, it's 6 or 7. The future is not looking great if we continue on this course. So I think often about how we move from the prevailing system into an emergent future that we're trying to build all together. It takes everyone on the planet to build this emergent future that we need to live in. And what does that look like? It is sustainable. It is equitable. Power is shared. So to your question of, like, how do we unfuck the world? We've got to transform it. We've got to build a new version of it. And how do we do that? Like, that's something that I think about a lot. And the prevailing system the space that I work in at the moment is around climate change, right? Which is just one of the planetary boundaries. Climate change right now is seen as like a threat to the status quo. And there's this moment where billionaires, businesses, they want to protect the status quo, and there are a lot of people who want to solve climate change, and they want to contribute to that, like financially, through philanthropy. Let's throw money at solving the problem. And the way that I think about climate change and this moment that we're in is that we can, yes, climate change is something that is a threat to the status quo, but maybe it's also an opportunity for us to kind of start building that emergent future where, if you imagine two worlds, like on the one hand, we've got the prevailing system, on the other hand, we've got the emergent system, the future, and the crossover of those two worlds, if it were as simple as a Venn diagram, the crossover, like that could be climate change, right? And you can kind of use that challenge to channel capital from the prevailing system into building the emergent system. And so I think about the complex ecosystem of groups, individuals, businesses, nations, communities that are working on a variety of different solutions, and they all need to be built up and supported. So something that I'm thinking about is how we like almost channel capital from that prevailing system through the prism of this challenge of climate change into a more broader way of building like this equitable, sustainable, emergent future. That definitely doesn't answer your question, but that's how I kind of think about it, I guess.
Are you enjoying the episode with Lucy? She just brings so much clarity about what influence actually is and the power of developing those skills yourself. And that's why I created something called the Influence Audit. It's a quick, powerful tool to help founders, creatives, and leaders like you understand how your voice is landing and how you can amplify it for greater impact. You'll get personalized insights from me and the Chorus team, a video breakdown of what's working, what's not, and where your greatest influence potential lives. Check out the link in the show notes to get started. But now, back to Lucy.
Well, there's that term, wicked problem, right? And what I love about that is that this unachievable goal of, this big audacious change that's trying to be made, or something that is a real challenge, an existential threat. And the more you solve, the more you have to solve, the deeper you have to get into different areas of the problem. You have to coordinate different groups, you have to draw on different resources, but there's this constant drive to try and solve it, no matter what, and I think the thing that has inspired me about you time and time again, knowing each other now for almost a decade.
Forever.
Is that you are relentless in the pursuit of whatever it is that you find important at that time in that organisation. I met you at Intrepid, and we had a lot of fun doing content and going on these global trips, and it's a really tough life when you're doing that. But your focus there in terms of empowering women around the world and giving them agency within the organisation that you were part of struck me as something that was so powerful and so inspiring, that to see you continue that journey and just go for bigger and bigger, more audacious change meant that I just couldn't help but ask you to come and chat to me about influence, about how we use the skills and the resources that we have as individuals to influence others in our life, to influence the world around us. And that question about how do we unfuck the world, the next part of that question, the follow-on, is who is going to do it? So in your world and in your experience, who are the people that can lead this change?
you have like the two biggest possible questions. Here was me thinking like we're just going to think about like day to day, like talk me through your routine.
Yeah,
like how do you think about things like influence? You're like, no, how do we unfuck the world and who's going to do it? Okay.
I've got you for such a beautiful like short amount of time that we get to catch up. So
you're
I'm
like
gonna make the most of it.
straight in there. I love it. So who is going to do it? You and me and all of us. Something that I feel deeply is no one is coming to save us. There is no one. There was no one else. There's no other moment. I think that no, it's not a superpower. It's something that I think I do quite naturally is live in the moment. Lots of people strive to do that, but I seem to do it naturally. And it's almost to my detriment sometimes because I'm not always thinking about the future and I'm very rarely thinking about the past. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I think it connects to influence and being with someone in the moment and making them feel what you feel, which is there is no other second. There's only right now. Only you and I can change anything. This is the only thing to me that exists is right now. And to take that a step further, who is going to change the world? It's a whole lot of people waking up to that fact that there's not an institution kind of behind the scenes that is working on fixing the problems. There's the perception of institutions fixing the problems, but institutions are just made up of you and me
people
in this moment doing the work. Yeah, it's just us. It's everybody. There isn't like a... Different people have different levels of power. I think a lot about power. Who holds power? Power over versus power with.
What is power?
Power is your ability to achieve an outcome. That's what power is.
Literally, when we're talking about empowering.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right?
Of course. And so who has power? That's like the thing that's at the Krusk. The Krusk? I'm hungry.
The Krusket.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Kruskets. It's breakfast time. Oh, power is at the center of all of the challenges that we're trying to unravel, how we're trying to unfuck the world. Who holds power right now and what they choose to do with that power and how we can shift that power. Like I think about that in the work that I'm doing, but also just in terms of how I live my life. One thing that is an interesting, like an idea that I'm curious about right now is the concept of relinquishing power, what it feels like to relinquish control and leaning into that and getting curious about what's possible if you relinquish power, if you relinquish control, if you share power, different styles and ways of being in groups. What does leadership look like when power is shared? What is possible? What can you achieve? Yeah. I can't remember the original question.
When you're talking about power, the amazing thing that I've witnessed over my career and my interaction with other human beings, and then also my own life, is that there's kind of nothing in our world that's more relative, and our perception of power is completely warped by so many different external factors. So whether we're talking about our own family, history, psychology, society, media, there's this default I think that we have of giving up our power because it's easier in some regards. It's easier to relinquish power and put the onus on other people, other institutions, other societies as having influence over us, having the power over us. It's easier to do that than it is to take ownership. Not even that, just acknowledge and realize the power that we have to change our world. Or not even change, but just be present in our world, you know. And I think the philosophy that you have at Work for Climate and Sunrise Project of working with individuals within organisations to empower them with the knowledge, the resources, the roadmap to affect the change they know that they can make deep down inside. They know that they've got that within them. That is the key to allowing people to realise that power and to strip away this false idea that it is someone else that is going to come and make this change for us.
Exactly. And that idea of, and this is where influence comes back into it, when you start to have an awareness of the fact that an individual can influence a power holder, a decision maker, you can influence different outcomes based on the way you are in the world and the way that you connect with other people and the stories that you tell. Like, I'm interested in this interplay between influence, storytelling, shifting power, and not a lot of people that you come across believe that they have the ability to influence power. And that's something that we're trying to do in our work. And you talked about when we first met, and I was working at Intrepid on the gender equality initiatives. That was the first moment when I really started to understand that as an individual, I was able to influence decision makers to make decisions, set goals for a large corporation that would impact the lives of a group of women in a bunch of communities around the world. And it wasn't me alone. There was myself and a couple of others inside the organisation at the time, and we sort of worked together on a vision for what female leadership in the communities that Intrepid was operating in around the world might look like. And then we helped bring that to life through the stories that we were telling internally to the power holders, to the decision makers, to help them imagine a different future for the business. Seeing that come to fruition over the years, and Intrepid have done an extraordinary job, really great leadership to get them there. And seeing that come to fruition served as evidence to me that, like, literally one or two people can influence really big things in the world. And it was kind of at that point when I wanted to be working on building this emergent future. Gender equality is one of those things. Equity, diversity, inclusion, sustainability, like all of those things are really important to me. And at that time, climate change was the thing that had become, I was galvanized by a moment in time in 2019, and the bushfires had recently, were still happening, and we were wearing masks, and it was not because of COVID. It was like pre-COVID, and Greta Thunberg spoke to the UN. Like, I was galvanized in that moment, as were many other people. And I just thought, okay, all of the things I care deeply about, they kind of like cascade down from climate change and this moment and this emergency that we are in. We kind of need to address this as part of the process of addressing all of the other inequities, and thinking about that idea of influencing power inside a large organization and almost leveraging the organization to create change. That was what set me on this path with Work for Climate. It was like, what if I could find all of the people like me inside of companies all around the world and bring to life for them through story. You can change outcomes in the world, and all it takes is being in a moment with another person and influencing their decision making, helping them use their power that they have within the structure of the organization to make a different decision, and it can change an outcome. And that's kind of how I ended up here doing this work.
What was the moment that it all tipped for you?
Do you mean it in terms of...
Literally, like the moment in time. Can you remember, like, when
around thinking about...
I need to shift, I need to step on from what I'm doing right now and look at climate in particular?
Yeah, I remember it very clearly. I was on the tram going into work. It was July 2019. I was going back to work from parental leave. I just had my son kind of 6 months before, 8 months before. And for anyone who has gone through that transformation, I mean, transformation is the word that we give when we become like a parent, but really it's like the complete annihilation of life as you know it, and of yourself, and then stacking back together something else. So I was in that state, and I was just going back to work, trying to become a version of myself again. And I was doing what everyone else does, which is like reading the news or whatever on my phone, on the tram, on the way into work. It was a packed tram. And I mentioned her before, but Greta Thunberg did her speech to the UN. I think it was her inaugural speech to the UN. And the words that come to the front of my mind in this moment as I'm talking to you, because I've talked about this before because it changed my life. The words that come to mind right now, she said, "We will never forgive you." That was the moment. I broke down in tears on this packed tram, sobbing because I was in that highly triggerable state. Influence one person. And yeah, like I don't need to say any more. I think that resonated with so many people at the time. And you almost become desensitized to it, actually, particularly when you are working in the space. But that was a very powerful piece of storytelling, and it found me at the time I needed it, and it really did change. I made a decision in that moment. I can't remember if I sent the email kind of there or later on in the day or the week, but I remember emailing Daryl, one of the co-founders of Intrepid, and saying, look, I want to purely work on purpose, on climate initiatives. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. And he was, of course, very supportive. And that really changed everything.
What were the elements that came together in that moment for you to have such a powerful impact and then a lasting impact? If we get technical.
That is a great question, because I guess that question gets to the heart of personal transformation, and it will take many, many people experiencing personal transformation in order for us to unfuck the world, like you say. So it's helpful to break that down. Thank you for the question. I think that for me, like I mentioned, the mental state, the emotional state that I was in was heightened. I was kind of ripe for receiving a message. So that kind of the lead up, the environment around receiving that message was really critical to it landing. And the messenger tied to that emotional state that I was in of becoming a parent and thinking about not just children and the future, but thinking about your child, which is like it's such a privileged place to approach that, to think about it from. Because it's like, oh yeah, your whole life you never had to worry about something, and then you become a parent and now you're worrying about it. Like, yeah, I get it. It's a very privileged way to experience the impact. And I know many, many, many campaigners, environmentalists, activists who have been on the front lines of fighting for social justice their entire lives. And I think they would probably argue, like, it didn't take that for them to awaken to the reality of the world that we're living in and the fight that we're in and the work that it's going to take in order to transform that. But this is just my story. Like,
that was the hook.
I had been in this really privileged bubble, and that moment just snapped me out of it.
Or it compelled you forward. From the outside, it has been a continuum. It's not something that you've changed direction. This is a progression into the work that you're doing now from the work that you were doing then. You had the same compassion, the same interest in humanity and connection, and then this is just, in my mind, like a logical extension of that. So I don't think you should be down on yourself for not being aware or being ignorant to the fact before you had that moment.
Yeah.
I think you were probably ripe for the picking of this moment of inspiration. And yes, the connection to family and children gives us such an incredible connection to the future, and helps us be less selfish when it comes to our view of the world, because it is, we get an extra 100 years or 80 years, the next generation, that we have a physical and, in your case, biochemical connection to. But we've all got that capacity for empathy. We've all got the capacity to connect with future generations, past generations, fellow generations, right? It's just, how do we unlock that in each other, or allow each other to embrace that fact instead of being polarized, instead of being isolated within our own algorithm feed.
So how do we, Kade? What's the answer?
Story.
There you go, right?
But leadership as well, and the ability for individuals to lead and groups of people to lead, right? And I think there's this incredible effect that happens in story. It's it's that mirroring effect, the mirror neurons in our brain that get switched on when we see a character that we relate to, or we're enticed to kind of step back from our go linear thinking and think more emotionally. Good song, even like a smell, a lighting, all of those elements can combine to stop us in our tracks and switch modes, right? And when we're in that mode, we're more receptive to change. We're receptive to connection. So anytime we're telling stories, having that character, that core character that gives us a reflection of ourselves, is, in my mind, the most powerful way to affect change within individuals, right? And in your background in film, then in content, and now in leadership, essentially, you've developed this incredible tool set to engage with people, inspire people to action. So can we go back a bit into the film world and what got you into that passion, something that still continues now, even though you're you're to the wall with the work that you're doing, you're still finding time to be creative, to practice image making. What is it about that world that you find so beautiful?
So it's story, but for two reasons. And so like the surface level answer is, it's storytelling, right? And I think that story is something that resonates with all humans, but some of us seek it out as the thing that you're really curious about, that you follow in your life. So for me, film was story. But there was like there's a deeper layer to that, which is probably, it comes to family and family story. Like my dad worked in the film industry his whole life. And as I was growing up, my parents were separated when I was younger, and I didn't get to spend that much time with my dad. And I think for me, the way that I could connect with him, the way that I could get the attention that I really wanted from him was by speaking his language and by being able to share story with him. And so I strived to follow in his footsteps. Like I was chasing him just to be able to get him to shine his light on me. And that's, like, this is not something I've really spoken about, but I think that I wanted a shared language with someone that I didn't get much airtime with, and I wanted to have like our own world where we could talk about something together, and kind of followed in his footsteps down this a really technical career. Like I worked in film camera technology, working on 35mm and 16mm film cameras. Like it's kind of legacy technology now, although it's coming back and it's at the heart of film storytelling. And then at the same time, I kind of went to university, studied film, worked in that world for about 6 or 7 years, and a whole bunch of stuff happened in the world. The global financial crisis was one of those things, and I moved back from Europe to Australia and kind of retrained. But the thread for me to find a career that would work for me when I moved to Melbourne, when I moved to Australia, because there wasn't like enough for me to sustain a living out of being a film camera technician.
A clapper loader.
Yeah, in 2008. I was like, what can I do? And I'd always been a competent writer, not a great writer, but competent. I was really interested in advertising and brand. I went to award school. I retrained, started working in advertising here in Melbourne, and then that kind of took me down this separate path away from that technical side of film production, but it had that continuum of the storytelling piece. And so that was the world I moved into. It was like advertising, brand, storytelling, content. I ended up with a job at Intrepid Travel, and I've said this many times previously, best job ever, best company ever. Like, had an amazing career there, was given the opportunity to build an in-house creative department, which allowed me to not just learn about storytelling in that business and brand world, but it also helped me learn about leadership and what people need in order to thrive and to develop and to pursue their own career goals. So it was a really great training ground for me, and I had so many amazing opportunities and experiences. So that's the story.
What was the elements of advertising, writing, creative that you found had the most effect? That you saw parallels between your previous life in film and the pure kind of creative arts into the more, let's call them applied arts of the umbrella term of creative. What were the things that you found really hit the mark, that made the change or got the results that that you were after?
So the thing about advertising, and anyone
here we go.
who is anyone who's an ad nerd,
This is going to be the clip, by the way. See,
anyone. Let me tell you about advertising. No, the thing about advertising that I loved was the combination of like the science of business and art to create a very, what's the word? Like a good ad is a story in as few words as possible. It's like the perfect equation, right? You can't take anything else away from it. And as an audience or as a reader looking at or reading an ad, the sum is never there. It's just like it's the calculus, but you do it yourself as the reader. Like I loved that. That was what lured me in. And I think that resonates somewhat with the film piece as well. And we were talking about this before we started recording, that combination of excellent technical ability or the technical aspects that go into a production of something like a podcast or a film or a photo shoot, like the technicality of it, when it is so good that it disappears and then the story comes to the front. It's like it has to, the technical side has to be so good for it to disappear. And then the story comes through. Like I feel like that resonates with the advertising piece of like this perfect equation. And you don't see any of the workings out. You just see the equation in its simplest, truest form. And then the story lands. Like I love
audience.
Those things. Yes,
Story lands in the audience. It's not something that
exactly.
you... Yeah.
They close the circle themselves. I love that.
There's a idea that I'm floating around recently. Well, I'm really attracted to, and that's that this kind of renaissance of analog technology in storytelling is completely in tune with what you're talking about the technicality and the care that needs to go into creating really compelling work. And someone like a Chris Nolan or, the famous filmmakers that are still using film technology to make these blockbusters, right down to some of our colleagues who are doing incredible travel films using 35mm, 16mm. It's that the technical approach and the care that needs to go into crafting that work is so high when using that technology that it draws out the best artist. It draws out someone that's taking care in what they're creating rather than, this kind of easy at hand technology that we have for creating imagery in film now, like pointing a camera and taking a snap. That's good for some instances, but for the kind of craft and impact that you're talking about, like imagine everyone slowing down and putting all their worth into that one moment that they're capturing in one frame. That's what you capture when you slow down and pay that attention that you're talking about in advertising, but also in film, in creating work, music.
Yeah, it's about making it real, putting fingerprints on it. Like who has touched it? In the digital world, like you don't have to touch anything. There is less and less interaction with the medium, which is great. And there's a democratization of content and storytelling and the ability to distribute at scale, access to tools, brilliant. But also, I think about film and the fact that it exists because light came from the sun and it hit something and it reflected onto a piece of celluloid and it created a chemical reaction. That is cool. So there is a magic in that. I mean, there's magic in everything. There's magic in digital technology, but or you look at a painting and the fact that somebody touched that, they mixed it and they created it with their hands, and it's really human.
We need to feel that humanness in a piece of art, in a piece of influence that we're experiencing in order to relate to it. So we get bombarded with messaging, imagery, information a million times a day, right? It's the ones that have that sense of humanness behind it that makes us stop and pay attention. It's Greta Thunberg, who you know as someone who's sacrificed and had the courage and is different, stands outside her world in order to have that perspective that makes you stop and go, I'm into this, I'm tuning into this story, and then it resonates with everything else in your world. But it is that fingerprint that you're talking about that exists that makes us pay attention. And it just strikes me as we go from, if we look at the whole gamut of media that we consume, the vast majority is about attention. It's about, these moments of just swinging past our focus. But the things that make the change when it becomes about a human to human. It's like everything that we do is just trying to set up that moment where we're connecting to another human being, and that's the true moment of influence. So everything has its place. The digital has its place, the high frequency, getting attention, being on the radar, but sitting in a room with someone, which I know is something that you do, for a lot of your work, and having that single conversation is the ultimate moment of influence, because that's when change really happens, right?
There's only that moment. There's only this moment. There's only human to human connection. I was thinking before we started talking about the idea that imagination is what separates the human space. Imagination is what separates human beings from other animals and creatures, right? The fact that we can imagine and reflect on different scenarios. We evolved to be able to do that, and that is what separates us. But there's a second part to that, which is that we have this deep-seated drive to connect our scenarios with those that other people are imagining. Like, that's storytelling. That is why we come together to try and connect, and we reflect on different things that we're imagining. That's pretty much all there is to it, and everything else is superfluous. All we are doing as human beings is imagining different scenarios, and it kind of ties back to what children are doing when they're at play, right? Children are hypothesizing. They're testing out different scenarios. They're building their world.
Testing boundaries.
Oh, yeah. But they are starting to work with their imagination and work with that scenario building and connecting their scenarios with that of their peers, and they're imagining different excuse me, they're imagining different games and stories that they're telling. And that idea of play, like, I'm quite curious about now as an adult, bringing awareness around play into our day-to-day, our work, our imagined scenarios, how we reflect on things. It's what we're born doing. It's what scientists do. Like, when they hypothesize, that comes from imagination. That there's a playful element to science. Everything that we know to be true, that we are basing our plans for the future on, is also based on science and scientific scenarios that have all been born out of an imagined hypothesis that is then tested. Like, that is science. And so I'm really interested in this interplay between those things, like imagination, play, storytelling, influence, power. Like that's the constellation of ideas that are going around in my mind as we're having this conversation.
I've always been someone who has sought sensuality, and in the way that our body is involved in our imagination, our creativity, and our motivation, right? And so through sport, through love, through dance and theatre and drama, like the moments where I've felt more in my body or been engaged physically in things are the moments where I feel most like inspired and ready for whatever's to come, whatever challenge. And I have to check myself, if I get into a moment of depression or, existential crisis, like have I moved? Have I exercised? Have, I taken a moment to refill that physical cup? And I think that's something that gets missed so often. When you're talking about play, I was on the train the other day and saw a kid sitting on his cricket bag talking to his mates, and I'm like, when was the last time I played sport with someone else? Had that game, that sense of play.
You need to play a sport, Kate.
No, I know, I know.
Like what?
No, but I mean, like we grow up and our schooling and everything, we've got those opportunities and we have moments, and we, in our world, we feel that it's overwhelming then. But now, as we get more channeled into our careers or our family, those things tend to kind of fall by the wayside. I'm very conscious of talking to someone like you who's running marathons and doing all this. That I've got a lot to learn.
Play.
Yeah, totally.
Like I actually need to deprioritize play a little bit because I am often like I lack credibility as a serious person because I do believe that life is about play, but that all of those other things, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is that all of these other things that are critical to building the world that we want to build, they kind of all come back to what it means to be human, and play, imagination, storytelling are central to that.
Sally just called, so just interrupted. She's the one person that can cut through my
the emergency phone call.
Yeah.
Say hi from me. We've never met, which I can't believe.
Yeah, it's great.
Wow.
Yeah, we need to fix that.
Sally, if you're watching this, hello. My name's Lucy. I've heard so much about you. I follow your Instagram. I would really love to be friends, okay? And then we can cut out the middleman and it can just be you and me.
I can't tell you how many people have tried to do that. Cut me
I
out
bet.
just to be friends with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's literally why I'm here. So no big deal, but call me. She's never going to see this, I know.
No, she doesn't watch any of my stuff. No. I watch all of hers.
I know. The life of a content professional.
Yeah, totally.
Filmmaker. My husband's the same. He's like, no, I didn't listen to your podcast. Didn't read the thing you wrote. Didn't see it. No.
But that's a part of me.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I need you to help me with the laundry, babe. Lol. Us with our creative lifestyles. Meanwhile, we have people like holding up our lives. That's what being a creative person is.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And coming to terms with that as well is really important. Otherwise, there's no kind of progression or safety. And that's something that inspired me to start this show, is building a bridge between the creative arts and the professional world and the rest of society, showing that there is so much value in the skills and the points of view of artists and how they go about their craft, how desperate business, society are for those skills, but they also don't know how to ask for them, or they don't realise that it's artists is the way that they look at the world, that that they're after, right? But then on the flip side as well, showing someone who is creative that there is so much value in what you do. And if you are able to look beyond that craft that you have, or that need to work within that very thin slice of the world, you know, there is incredible opportunity for you to apply those skills across, you know, business, not-for-profits, government, society as a whole. You're someone that I hold up on that pedestal of being able to have made that step from the arts into some really serious and important work. And I think maybe to leave this on a practical note for people, what are the elements that you think are really important for someone that wants to step out and make change in their world?
Thank you for that observation. That's really kind. I have at times struggled being a creative person in leadership roles or in business, because there is a tension between creative practices and the way that you think and see the world and operate and tap into play and tap into imagination, and the practical ways that are required to operate in order to create frameworks and develop processes or improve processes for teams and for organizations. And I think it's talked about more widely as like the manager-maker kind of balance, how you proactively shift between the two, or how you think about merging the two. And the way that I work with that is through the awareness that, okay, there's different ways of being, thinking, doing, and sometimes I'll be proactively leaning into a more, let's call it like a right-brained way of being, and then other times I'll be leaning into a left-brained way of thinking, being, and doing. One framework that has been really helpful for me recently has been thinking about, in our team we are working on how we decolonize ourselves, our team, our work, and what that means. And we've received some guidance around like decolonize patterns, different ways of thinking, being, and doing, and bringing those into our work as practices in order to help us get out of like the capitalist kind of productivity over all else way of being. Going back to that original concept of like the prevailing system and the emergent system, like how do we get out of the race and think differently? And we have this inherent knowledge that we don't always tap into, that we can use to help us move between those two worlds, those ways of thinking. And sometimes, yes, you do need to be super structured. You do need to be thinking about process, productivity, how we're pushing projects along. And then other times you need to be more cyclical. You need to look elsewhere for a starting point or a circuit breaker. Divergent thinking, like those more like creative ways of being can be really helpful in order to achieve the things that you want to achieve. So a practical takeaway that I would offer for people is having just some basic frameworks on both of those sides. Like, know your core creative practices and also know your core kind of productivity principles. Operational. Love that. Yep. And then have awareness around when you're in one and when you're in the other.
It's a CPU, GPU.
From there, you can move from awareness into intention. It's like, okay, I'm intentionally going to stretch out the amount of time that I'm sitting with uncertainty. I'm going to intentionally not make a decision and push something forward in order to allow for other things to bubble up, other ideas to come in. Or I'm intentionally going to make a decision. Like I've mapped through a bunch of the second and third order consequences, and I'm going to make a decision and push this thing forward now. Switching between those two is how you bring those two worlds together. But yeah, it's hard.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, it's hard. It's okay to switch. It's okay to be duplicitous, call it, being that two in one package when it comes to putting everything into practice and going after the goal, right? As a group, as an individual. I think that's, I struggle with a lot. It's like, I am a creative individual. I'm also a manager and a boss. I need to be clear about the objectives and how we're going to get there. I need to be creative, and I need to, to have my creative cup filled up. That tension's really, really tough to sit with, but it is the ticket to living the complete, life when it comes to what we want to do, right?
I would say that you're a master at it, Kade. Like when you're in a creative process, you are in it and exceptional at the work that you do. And also when you are in a leadership kind of directing or producing something, it's the total switch, and you're a master of that as well. I would say that you're definitely someone that I look up to in order to get better at navigating this tension.
It's an incredible compliment coming from you, I have to say. Let me finish off with a couple of quick fire questions. Number one is, what's influencing you at the moment? Is it a piece of art, a piece of content, a person? Where'd that take you?
I think, so I'm pretty discerning about what goes in my mind, what I'm reading, what I'm watching. And I took a moment there to really think through what is influencing my decisions, my attention, my behavior. And I think I have goals that I'm in pursuit of, personally, creatively, professionally, and it's almost like they are the influence. They are the things that allow me to decide what I'm going to do on any given day. And then I'm fairly disciplined in pursuit of those things. The people that I spend my time with are the biggest influence on me. And I spend my time with people who are in pursuit of the same goals and outcomes that I'm in pursuit of. So professionally, in my job, on a day-to-day basis, I'm influenced by people who are on this mission. of building a better future. Like, that's who I'm influenced by. It's the people that I'm talking to, and it's all of us who are in this work together. And in my personal life, my partner and I are, like, he's the biggest influence on my life because we're both in the mission together. We are mission aligned, but we're also life aligned. So he's a really big influence on me. Yeah, so it's the people that I'm with. I wouldn't say there's like many external influences. Like, I listen to your podcast, obviously, so you're a massive influence. Do you see what I did there?
I love that.
Yeah, it was
thank
good.
you.
Yeah. But that is that's an honest answer, and I did take time to think deeply through that.
I love the thing that is a really nice connection to right back what we're talking about in terms of our own control over power. Is that what you've just stated there? Is that the things that are influencing you, things that you are able to choose. And we're so used to seeing influence as something that is thrust upon us and we're being influenced. But what you've just described is that you're actively able to craft the things in your life that is influencing you, and you have command over that. So going forward, being able to, kind of master your own path and go after your own goals is in your command. Realizing that together is the way to unlock people to realize the power that they have over their world. So if we can choose the things that are influencing us, if we can master what they are, know what our media diet is, know what our people diet is, know what our goals are and why those goals are important. Are they really important, or are they something that's been given to us or that we've inherited from someone? I think that is the key to unlocking our personal power and ability to then go forward and influence. One final question, because I'm really curious. Is there a piece of art that you'd leave with someone, or you'd say is the number one thing that they need to have in their world in order to remain human, inspired? What is the desert island piece of content, media, art that you would gift to someone?
Without specifics, it would probably be a piece of music. Because music, for me, just makes you feel through every sense. It's visual because it goes back to that imagination piece. You are imagining the scenario of the story that is being communicated through the music.
It's a shortcut to the soul.
Yeah,
instantly.
love that. Yeah.
I'm with you for sure.
How about you?
I always come back to Arrival by Denis Villeneuve. The movie, Amy Adams, Aliens. I'm a big sci-fi guy, but there are moments of visual. There's visuals in those. There's like single shots that just like hit me to the core, and then there's the craft of storytelling in that piece that makes me emotional.
Oh wow!
When I like experience how beautiful the plot and the characters kind of come together.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I mean, like there is a universe in the specific, and I just saw into your universe, and I could, like, if I took the time to go through my Rolodex in my mind and provide you specifics, like yes, there's a dozen or so of the things that I would go back to, but your answer is way better.
We've all got them.
Yeah.
It's all things that it's so deeply personal, but
Yeah.
have that.
I should have prepped for that question.
I didn't give you any prep time, so yeah, I did put you on the spot.
No, it was good.
It's been incredible. Thank you for giving your time and your very full life to sit down, and you mean a lot to me, and you mean a lot to my career and my perspective on the world. I kind of ask at times, what would Lucy do, and how would she approach this, and particularly around.
And do you do the opposite?
Yeah. What, I sit on my ass and don't go for that run? Yeah. No, I think that balance of the operational and the inspirational. You walk masterfully. So I hope that other people have got as much out of this as I've got out of spending the time with you. And
I'm going to cry.
thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Kade. Straight back at you. All of those things. This was wonderful. Thank you.
That was Lucy Piper, a walking reminder that influence doesn't require permission, it requires presence. If something in this episode moved you, do me a favor, share it with someone who's on the edge of stepping into their own influence. Make sure to follow The Art of Influence wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're feeling generous, leave us a quick review. It helps more than you know. Until next time, go forth and use influence to create the change you wish to see in the world.